What would you do if your secret girlfriend dies in your room when you were both in the act? This is the story of a young man named Kelvin, a young National Service personnel who fell in love with a 17-year-old senior high school student in Custer Senior High. You might have questions, but relax and enjoy as we unfold the tale of Kelvin and Maureen until the misfortune happened. Once upon a time in Holy City, there lived a couple named Mr. and Mrs. Benson. The couple have made a good name for the city, winning the hearts of many who encountered them. After a year into their marriage, they bore a handsome baby boy whom they named Kelvin. They were not too rich and influential, but they did all they can to give their son all he needed. Mr. Benson was an upcoming businessman who supplies the city with stationery for the schools around, while his wife runs a medium-sized fabric shop. They took Kelvin to the best schools in the city, making sure he got the best education, which will take him to places and levels they couldn't get to. As if this wasn't enough, they gave him the best upbringing they could give him, advising him about issues of life and teaching him the way he should go. Kelvin grew up being a young, responsible man who took his studies very serious. There were times he could top his class and sweep away all the awards available. Many years passed by, and his parents grew more and more proud of him. After senior high school, Kelvin enrolled in a teacher's training college where he trained as a professional teacher. To him, he wanted to give out the knowledge he has acquired to everyone who cares to learn, hence his desire to be a teacher. He learnt really hard to make this dream of his materialized. At the college, Kelvin took up many positions that made him more respectable and honored student in the university. Even his classmates would come to him to teach them when they face any difficulty. They would come to him with all types of questions, some even beyond his level, yet he would answer them with ease. This continued many years till they finally completed the college. As tradition dictates, every graduate from a college or university is required to serve the nation for a year to gain practical, hands-on experience in their field. For many, this is simply a mandatory step in their career journey, but for Kelvin, it marked the beginning of a life-changing chapter. This was where everything took a significant turn for him. The theoretical knowledge he had gained over the years was about to meet real-world challenges, and it thrilled him to no end. Kelvin's parents were overjoyed. Their only son, now a proud university graduate, was stepping into the world of work, a milestone they had long prayed for. It was a moment of immense pride for them, not only because Kelvin was finally entering the job market, but because he was about to pursue what he was truly passionate about, teaching. His heart had always been set on making an impact in the lives of young students, and now he had the chance to do just that. The house was buzzing with excitement in the days leading up to his move. Friends and family visited to offer their well wishes, and the air was filled with optimism. His parents beamed with hope for his future, imagining all the doors that would open for him as he began his professional life. There was joy and laughter in every corner of the home, as his mother and father quietly held onto their prayers for his success. A few days after the celebration, Kelvin packed his belongings and moved out of his parents' home. He had found a modest single-room apartment, which was located conveniently near the school where he would soon begin teaching. The room was small, but to Kelvin it felt like a kingdom. It was a space all his own, a symbol of independence and the start of his adult life. He stood in the middle of the room that first night, feeling an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. This was the happiest day of his life. As soon as the new academic term began, Kelvin found himself standing at the front of the assembly hall. The headmistress of Custer Senior High School formally introduced him to the eager crowd of students. A ripple of excitement swept through the hall, and he could feel the energy buzzing in the air. The young ladies in particular seemed captivated by the sight of a youthful, handsome teacher in their midst, exchanging whispers and giggles as they stole glances at him. Many of them silently hoped to catch his attention, dreaming of being in his good books or even sharing a conversation with him. Despite the flurry of attention and the curious eyes fixed on him, Kelvin remained composed. He appreciated the warm reception, but his mind was focused on something much deeper. Teaching was his passion, a calling that gave him a sense of purpose, and he had no intention of letting distractions interfere. He had worked hard to be where he was, and he knew that his real value lay not in fleeting admiration, but in shaping young minds. His focus was laser-sharp. He was here to do what he loved most, which is imparting knowledge and inspiring his students. In the classroom, the atmosphere was often charged with a mix of academic focus and the lively, albeit subtle, attempts of the young ladies to capture Kelvin's attention. They asked countless questions, some genuine, others clearly meant to make their presence known. Their efforts were thinly veiled, but Kelvin, ever the professional, chose to see it differently. To him, their questions and eagerness simply added to the lively energy in his class, making the lessons more engaging. He appreciated how their enthusiasm helped foster interaction, bringing life to what might otherwise be a routine classroom environment. In his class, his female students were always at the forefront of seeking his attention. Karen, for instance, developed a habit of bringing him breakfast almost every morning. She would walk in with a warm smile and hand over a neatly packed meal, explaining that her mother had sent it for him. "She says you need to keep your strength up, sir," Karen would say with a soft giggle, though Kelvin could easily sense the gesture was more from her than from her mother. Then there was Bertha, who took a different approach. She would occasionally leave a small envelope on his desk, claiming it was from her father, as a token of appreciation for the work Kelvin was doing with his daughter. "My dad says you're the best teacher I've ever had," she would say with a shy smile, before quickly disappearing. Despite the gestures, Kelvin always made sure to return the money, reminding her that he was simply doing his job. Maureen, on the other hand, was always offering to help him with errands, even when there was absolutely nothing to be done. "Sir, do you need me to run to the store for anything?" she would ask. Or, "Can I help with the class papers?" She seemed to be everywhere at once, eager to please in any way she could. While Kelvin admired their enthusiasm, he kept his distance, focused on his goal of providing the best education possible to his students. For weeks, this flurry of attention continued, each girl vying to be noticed in her own way. Yet amidst all the attempts to catch his eye, it was Marina, the quietest and perhaps the most beautiful girl in the class, who began to stand out to him. Unlike the others, Marina never tried to get his attention. She kept to herself, sitting quietly at her desk, diligently taking notes and focusing on her studies. She never participated in the other girls' efforts to draw him in, nor did she engage in the giggling or playful glances thrown his way. Her quiet demeanor intrigued Kelvin. It wasn't that she was disinterested. On the contrary, she was one of his brightest students, always prepared and thoughtful in her contributions, but she never sought out the spotlight. As the days went by, Kelvin found himself unconsciously noticing Marina more and more. Her quiet confidence, her focus, and the way she seemed to have a sense of purpose far beyond that of her peers intrigued him. There was a depth to her that he hadn't initially seen. Slowly, his attention began to shift. He found himself wondering about her during lessons, what she thought, what motivated her, why she seemed so different from the others. Marina's quiet presence began to draw him in, not because of any effort on her part, but because of the very fact that she stood apart. Without even trying, she had begun to catch his attention in a way no one else had. And while the other girls continued their playful efforts to gain his favor, it was Marina's silence that lingered in his mind long after the school day had ended. One day after school, as the final bell rang and students began packing their bags, Kelvin lingered a little longer in the classroom. He had been thinking about Marina for a while now, curious about the quiet strength she exuded and the way she seemed so self-sufficient, even as her peers clung to social circles or sought his attention. Today, he decided to reach out. "Marina, can I have a word with you before you leave?" he asked gently as she stood up from her desk. She paused, her usual calm expression not giving much away, but she nodded and approached his desk. The room emptied around them, leaving just the two of them in the stillness of the late afternoon. Kelvin leaned back in his chair, considering his words carefully. "I've noticed you're different from the others. You seem more mature, more composed, and I wanted to make sure everything is okay with you. How are you doing, really?" Marina hesitated for a moment, weighing whether to trust him. But then something shifted in her, and she let out a soft sigh, as if releasing a burden she'd been carrying for a while. "I'm fine, sir," she began, though there was a tiredness in her voice. "It's just, I've learned to be. My parents, they're always busy, running around with their businesses, traveling for meetings, opening new branches. They're hardly ever home. Most days it's just me." She paused, her voice steady, but revealing a quiet loneliness. "I've had to handle a lot on my own for as long as I can remember. There are things I've had to figure out myself because they're not around to help, but it's okay, I've gotten used to it. I'm doing fine on my own." Kelvin listened intently, feeling a tug of sympathy and admiration for this young girl who, despite her age, carried herself with the weight and wisdom of someone far older. While many of her classmates were preoccupied with trivial matters, Marina had been navigating life largely by herself, learning independence not by choice but by necessity. "That sounds like a lot to handle," Kelvin said softly, his heart moved by her story. "I had no idea you were going through all of that." Marina offered a small, almost resigned smile. "Most people don't, but it's fine, really. I don't need to burden anyone with it." There was a quiet strength in her, but also a fragility that Kelvin couldn't ignore. He realized that despite her independence, she was still just a teenager, facing the world with a brave face, but perhaps longing for the support and guidance she rarely received from her parents. Her maturity was born out of necessity, not choice, and it touched him deeply. "Listen, Marina," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "You don't have to do everything on your own. I admire your strength, but it's okay to need someone to talk to lean on, every now and then. I want you to know that I'm here for you. If you ever need someone to talk to about school, life, or anything at all, I'm available. You don't have to go through everything alone." For a moment, Marina looked taken aback. She wasn't used to this, someone offering to be there for her. She had spent so long being the one who handled things herself that the idea of leaning on someone else felt foreign, but as she looked into Kelvin's eyes, she saw sincerity. He wasn't offering out of pity, but from a place of genuine care. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly, her voice softer now, touched by his offer. "That means a lot." Kelvin smiled warmly. "You're welcome. You're strong, Marina. But remember, Strength doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. She nodded, and for the first time, Kelvin saw a hint of vulnerability in her, as if a small weight had been lifted from her shoulders. As she gathered her things and left the classroom, Kelvin watched her go, knowing that he had just taken a small step in becoming someone she could rely on. From that day forward, the dynamic between them shifted slightly. While Marina remained independent and focused, she knew that she now had someone in her corner. Someone who saw her not just as a student, but as a young woman navigating the complexities of life. And Kelvin, touched by her story, found himself even more invested in her well-being, silently vowing to be the support she needed whenever she was ready to reach out. Kelvin had genuinely become the man he promised to be for Marina. He stood by her side, not only as her teacher, but as her confidant and source of encouragement. He spent countless hours guiding her through her studies and offering emotional support. Over time, their bond grew deeper. They spent more time together, sharing moments of laughter and helping each other escape the loneliness that often crept into their lives. The roles they played in each other's lives became indispensable, and soon they realized that their connection had blossomed into something far more profound. They had fallen deeply in love. With Marina's parents frequently absent due to their business travels, she began spending more time at Kelvin's house. It became their haven, a place where they could share their thoughts, emotions, and simply enjoy each other's company. During one school vacation, Marina visited Kelvin, intending to spend a few days with him, as her parents were once again away on one of their trips. For the first couple of days, everything was as it always had been, easy, comfortable, and filled with the warmth of their growing affection. On the third day of her visit, however, something shifted. A heavy downpour started late in the afternoon, casting an intimate, cozy mood over the house. The sound of rain against the windows, coupled with their proximity, stirred emotions in both of them that were difficult to suppress. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken tension, and before they knew it, they found themselves unable to resist the pull between them. The storm outside mirrored the tempest of feelings they had inside, and soon they were in each other's arms, sharing tender touches and soft whispers as they made their way to the bed. But what began as a moment of passion soon took a terrifying turn. As they became more deeply entwined, Kelvin noticed something strange. Marina had gone completely still. Her usual soft sounds of pleasure had faded into silence, and her body no longer responded to his touch. Alarmed, Kelvin stopped and leaned over her, trying to understand what was happening. When he called her name and got no response, panic seized him. In the dim light of the room, he realized something was horribly wrong. Marina was unconscious. Fear gripped his heart as he shook her gently, then more urgently, but she didn't stir. His mind raced, and without fully thinking, he leaped from the bed, barely aware of his state of undress, and ran out of the house screaming for help. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion and his frantic cries, emerged from their homes, alarmed and confused. Some rushed to Kelvin's aid, while others exchanged concerned whispers, trying to piece together what had happened. As more people gathered outside, the shocking reality began to dawn on them. The young lady was unresponsive, and from the look of it, something had gone terribly wrong. In that moment, as Kelvin stood there, almost naked and trembling with fear, his heart pounding, the gravity of the situation finally hit him. This was no longer just an innocent romance. What had started as a sweet, loving bond had turned into a nightmare. The weight of what had happened and what it could mean crushed him. He realized, with a heart full of dread, that this was no longer a situation that could be laughed off or dismissed. Marina's fate hung in the balance, and his life would never be the same again. Marina was rushed to the hospital, but tragically it was too late. She had already lost her life. The news of her passing spread rapidly, reaching her parents in no time. When they heard of their daughter's untimely death, their hearts were shattered. Overwhelmed with grief and anger, they vowed to hold whoever was responsible accountable. Kelvin was swiftly arrested, and authorities demanded that he contact his parents immediately. This was the beginning of Kelvin's disaster.